everyone, thanks for coming by. Today's video is a project share and a tutorial for my recent mini album using the Golden Coast line by Prima, and I also used the Tonic memory book maker dies. So both the paper collection and the dies can be found at countrycraftcreations.com. I know that a lot of people don't know how to use the dies, or I don't know, maybe just need some different ideas. When I show my tutorial, I may do this a little bit differently than some of the other videos you've seen, but I did what worked for me, and so use it as you like. There might be other ones out there that do show it a little bit differently, and that's totally okay. But let me first talk to you a little bit about the dies, just so you know that I did not shape these myself. These were they came from these dies, and there are 10 of them in the pack, and so they have it so that you can use any size to make the cover. So know that some of them have a empty edge where it does not cut through, and some of them have it that do cut on both ends, and I'll get to that in a minute. But just so you know, this is what the dies look like. So this is the largest one, using the largest die, and the measurement of this book across, it's about 6.5, and the height, now this is a tag, so I'm not going to count that. The height is about 5.5, so it's a nice size book, not too big, not too small. You can make it any depth that you want, and I chose to add 4 pages in my book. You can add more than that if you make a bigger spine. I also chose to make a hinge system rather than use just the page, and I'll get to that in a second. So just real quick, the cover, I have a chipboard piece that says sunshine, and I just added, it was too harsh, so I added a little bit of white Versamark ink that I have. There is a chipboard piece that was $49 in market that I had in my stash, and I just put white ink on it, and then I put a little bit of blue Tim Holtz broken glass, I think it's what it's called, broken china maybe, on top of it, because there's a slight blue in the paper, and again I wanted this to match and not be so harsh, just to have plain wood. So that's in the background. You'll see that I have some gold glitter paper. I had a die that I just had cut out and layered that up, started that on the bottom. I have just a little bit of cheesecloth. I have a flat back butterfly. It's actually iridescent, but I don't know if you can see that. Oh, maybe you can. These flowers are Prima flowers. I have a gold bow, metal bow down below that was a brad, and I just cut off the back. This gathered trim, and then I have a beaded trim on top that's flowers. This is a chipboard or a puffy sticker that came with the collection. Now on the side, I did punch a hole near the top, and I put a Tim Holtz pin thing at the top, or clip, and then I just have 2 things hanging from it. A mermaid, because it's a summer beach type theme, and a pink tassel. And then the back is plain. Now I used the 12 by 12s for my cover, so that has some gold foiling. The smaller pad does not have the gold foiling, and that's what I used on the inside. I did put a ribbon closure. This is from the store, this pink organza with the white polka dots. This is what I'm using. So when you open it, I just added a tag here with some glitter paper, and I left it open if you want to tuck something behind there. All of these pages are exactly the same. They might have a different word on it, but so there's 3 different sizes of dies. The largest for the page, then I went for a little bit smaller for the flap, and then this tiny one is just what is it, the second to the smallest maybe. I did cut out the word magical. I have a die that has that. I have some iridescent flatbacks on here. This is a gold piece that I had ordered, I don't even know from where, and it's got little rhinestones on it, and I added a flower, and to me that kind of looked like seaweed maybe. I mean, not obviously the flower, but I thought that gold looked like seaweed and thought it looked good. Now, I had forgotten to put magnets on before I started, so my solution to keep this closed was I took a gold paper clip and I added some seam binding, and then I did put that iridescent flat back on there, and I just clipped that closed to keep my page from flapping open. So this goes to the left. I just left this open. This is that pink pearlized or sparkly paper. She used to sell it in the store. I don't think she does anymore, but I had loaded up because I just loved it. I thought it looked really rich looking. So this is a place for a small photo. And then when you open it, this is left empty. You do need to keep these flat to close nicely. And then I had a die that's my own personal die that I cut out to frame a picture. Okay, so everything has, I think, should be flat on the inside. Now you'll notice that this paper has these cutout trim, around the edge. That is not from the main die set that Tammy sells at Country Craft Creations. You'll notice that doesn't have that. There is an additional Tonic package out there that you can look at that does come with some different patterns, and so I also purchased those on my own to give it a different look. Okay, so this does not come with the base kit, just so you know. So then you just close that up to keep it from flapping. You're going to go ahead and put the paper clip, oopsie, like so. And this I did combine 2 pages to make one, and so I glued those together and left the top open. And I just used one of my own personal dies to cut out just a different looking shape, and I cut out some of the paper and put that as a corner piece, and you can tuck a picture in behind, and then the back is plain, and I stapled some seam binding on the top. Okay, I'll just leave that off to the side. So then when you turn the page, the back, all I did was add a pocket. Now the pocket, I did use these dies, and then I just cut them in half, okay, and I matted them. And I had some trim that I cut down. It was thicker, and I just cut off a layer from the top, and I put that at the top of the page, and I thought that this was beautiful, so I felt very lucky that I had that in my stash. But any kind of lace trim would be pretty. And then I have some what do you call that, resin little bows, and so each page got a bow. And then these are from the collection. I just took and cut those out and then put them on black paper. So I think it'd be cool to write with the white pen on the back. And then there's the page without the tags. So it's really rich looking, I think. Okay, so that held 4 tags. And then you'll notice that every page is exactly the same. So then this one says Dream. The paper is a little bit different on this side. Okay, I'll go ahead and put the paper clips on later. The back looks the same, just different cut aparts inside. This one says Friends, and this one says Sparkle. Okay, and then the last back page I left plain. So I'm missing a paper clip. I wonder, oh, 1, 2, 3, no I'm not. 1, 2, they're all there. So I will walk through how I constructed the book. I won't show you about the decorating part, you know, your kind of use your own taste for that, but I will show you how I made the book because there are different ways of making it. So to do this, I needed artisan cardstock. You do want a thick cardstock, a heavier cardstock, a durable one. And you do have to use quite a few sheets, again, depending on the size and how many pages are in your book. So because I have my cover, the front and back cover, I used 2 pieces. So that took 1 sheet of 12 by 12. Now you could use 8.5 by 11. I'm not sure if you could get 2 on there or not. Let me take out a piece of 8.5 by 11. I should have done this ahead of time. Let's see if the largest die would fit twice. You know, I think it might be a hair short. If that's 11, this is 5.5. So that would be exactly, and because there's a little bit of a border, I don't think, I think you'd be cutting it pretty stinking close. You might cut some things off if you tried to get 2 out of 8.5 by 11, but you can try it. Okay, so let me go ahead and get my materials organized, and if you're interested in knowing, oh, so let me go back real quick, I just remembered. So I used 2 pieces for every single page. So the front cover is actually 2 pieces glued together, and the back is 2 pieces glued together. I have 4 pages, and they have a front and back, so there's 8 pieces, or 8 different cutouts. These smaller ones, there's only 1. I did not back those. So 8, 12, 13, 14. There's about 18 different pieces that you use that you're going to be using your die cutting machine for. So I had to do a lot of cranking. That was the only thing that I thought was a little bit of time involved, just because the die cutting machine I have is not electric, which is totally okay. I chose to not have an electric one, but it's time consuming to crank out 18 of these pages. But I think the end result is beautiful. So I'll be quiet. I'm going to get my stuff organized, and I'll come back with the tutorial. We're going to start by building our cover. And remember, at the beginning I said that one end of the die does not cut all the way through. So using the largest die, I placed it on my paper, and this is just sample paper that I'm using for the tutorial. When you place it on your paper, you don't want to place it all the way to the end. You do want to place it up higher so that you can cut a certain measurement that you can use for your spine. So this measurement is just kind of on you as to how big you want your spine to be. So I put mine on, and this is about a 1 inch from the bottom, okay? And you're going to need 4 of these for your cover. Now I just went ahead and did the next smaller size too, because we're going to be needing those. So that I got on one piece of 8.5 by 11. So again, you could put it way up here if you wanted to, and then you would have a lot longer. Now I will tell you that some people don't do their spine like I'm going to do, where it's squared off. Some people actually use like this for their spine, and they glue it so it's a really thick spine. They would glue it like so, and that's how thick your book would be. So if you got a smaller one, they could have the width of their spine be like this. So a lot of people use this for their spine also. I chose to use a rectangle. It was easier for me to work with, and I could make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and I already have one cut. And so what you're going to do then is just take your scissors, and there is a little line on each side. You're just going to cut up, and it's going to disconnect it from the paper. So cut up to that slit, okay? Now you'll notice it does have a dotted border, and if you look real close, you're also going to see that there is a score mark if you choose to use it. Okay, and I'm not going to need it for a while. So let's go ahead and cut 4 of those so that we can do our cover. And I ran them through the machine. I just need to cut them. Some might have be farther from the bottom. Some might be closer. Like this one looks more like I have about 1.5 inches at the bottom. And that's okay, the way I do it anyway. And here's our 4th one. Oh, I didn't cut straight on that one. Okay. So what I did next was I thought, okay, how big do I want my spine to be? And I chose to make mine 2.5 inches wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to score on these little score marks. Okay, so if you look close, you're going to see an indentation, maybe this camera. Can you see a slight line? That's going to be my fold line. So let's go ahead and score on that. And it's not going to be, maybe it is going to be perfect. Okay, I'm going to burnish that. And then I'm going to look for that little score line that's right there, bend it over, and burnish it. All right, so the next thing you're going to want to do is attach these two pieces. So you're going to be gluing these two on top of one another. Okay, you can tell I cut one thicker than the other, but we'll cover that. Is that right? How did I get one so much fatter than the other? Let me trim this up just because it's going to bother me. Where'd my son? Okay, not a big deal. All right, so like I said, I wanted mine to be about 2.5 inches. So what I did was I got my ruler, and starting at the score where we folded it, I placed my ruler, and I looked to see where 2.5 inches was. I'm running out of room on my desk. And I want the spine to be 2.5, so I want it to stop right here. So then I lined up the next score line at the 2.5. Okay. Did I go 2.5 or did I go 2? Yeah, I went 2.5. All right, so about right there. So I'm going to put a fine line of glue right here, and I'm going to attach those two so they're about 2.5 inches. So that's why you got to be careful on how much space you give yourself when you cut out using those dies. If you want a really thick spine, you're going to need to leave more room at the bottom. All right, so then what I did next to add stability is I cut out a piece that was the same measurement then as my spine, and I'm just going to glue that on top of what I just glued. Oops, I'm out of camera, out of frame. Like so, I'm just going to glue this rectangle piece on top. So mine measured 2.5 by 3 5/8, I believe. And let me just trim this up real quick. Okay, like so. And I'm going to glue that down. So your measurements may vary from mine, obviously, depending on how you're setting up your spine. And the more paper you add, the more layers, the more sturdy your book is going to be. Okay. So that's the base of our book. Now it's pretty flimsy and we don't want that. So that's why we add another layer to the front and the back. So what I chose to do next was make a hinge system. You don't have to do that. Oh, I got some rusty here. You don't have to do that because you can fold these and make, well, let me show you my way first. So I went ahead and I cut a piece of paper the height of my book, which was a 3 5/8, and this is, I think, 11 inches long, but we'll maybe end up trimming it. I like a 1/2 inch gusset, so what I did was I started at 1.5 and I scored, and then I'm going to go every 1/2 inch, so 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6. Let me see where I'm at. Hinge space, hinge space, hinge space. I need 6.5, 7, 7.5. Okay, let me double check that. So starting at 1.5, we went every 1/2 inch. So there's a hinge space, hinge space, hinge space, hinge. Actually, I don't need that last space, but so you could stop at 7. Actually, stop at 7. Okay. So now to make our hinge, for those of you who know how to do this, you can fast forward this part, and I'm just going to fold on the score lines. Alright, so what I do is, starting with the first one, that first score mark is the beginning of your first hinge. So I'm going to place glue on that first rectangle and fold it over. And then I don't know why I put glue first. Usually I don't do that, but and then I fold it forward. And that makes your first hinge. So I glued 2 rectangles together to make a hinge. Okay, so that was rectangle 1 and 2 that I glued together of the 1/2 inches. You leave the 3rd rectangle alone because that's your gusset, and then you're going to go to the 4th and 5th rectangle and combine those to be your next hinge. So if that's your hinge, you're going to move it, burnish it forward and backward, and that becomes your second hinge. Okay, so let me go ahead and finish the burnishing. So the next is your gusset, so skip that, and then you're going to take the next 2 rectangles and combine those. So 2 rectangles become a hinge, the 3rd one becomes the gusset. Burnish it forward and backward. That's going to be, now we have 3 hinges. Leave 1 space, and then let's do our last one. And then once we put those rectangles together, go forward and backward on the score line, like so. Okay, so that's how we get our 4. Now I'm going to go back and finish the gluing inside to keep them together. Keep getting off frame. Okay, make sure you got those real good. Some people choose to use score tape. I used to, but now I use the art glitter glue. Okay, so now I have 3 hinges glued. Let's do the last one. All right, so there's our 4. Now we obviously have more on this side. Here I have 1.5 inches, so I kind of want about 1.5 inches on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this up just so it's more equal. So I want this to be about 1.5. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so get your, I got rust on my cover, but this is just a sample, but I lost my pin to my art glitter glue, so the pin I put in isn't stainless, so it gets a little rusty when I, okay, so then we're going to center our hinge on this spine, and normally I wrap my extra wings around the back, but on this project I'm not, because I want it to be sturdy, and the more layers the better, because it's going to make it stronger. So I want these little wings to help keep the book attached, so those are going to stay out. So then I'm just going to go ahead and place glue on the back, and I would use heavy glue or score tape or both. I know some people like to do both. I'm not going to probably put as much on because this is a sample. And then make sure that when you line it up that you don't go above and below your top and bottom here. You want to line that up and center it. And I'm just eyeballing it. Make sure it doesn't go above and below. Take a look at the other side, doing good, and then burnish it on. Okay, now this is where I add a second piece to build strength. Not my designer paper, but another piece of the die piece that we cut out. So now for this one, I'm going to trim off this bottom piece so that it lines up on top here. So I'm going to cut on that score mark that's there. There's a light indentation. Oops, sorry. Ooh, that probably didn't sound good. And I'm going to do that with two pieces, one for the front and one for the back. So there's one. And you can trim off more if you want a closer. You can, you know what, I might cut off a little bit more instead of going on that little score mark. I think I like it closer to the edge. So let me trim this one again. Make that better. All right, so now we're going to glue this down, then you don't see the wings, and it is going to make it stronger. So let's just put some glue on here. Now because this is the cover, we want glue on all of it. We're not going to keep, at least I did not have a pocket. It wasn't open on the side or on the top for mine, for the cover. And then line them up with the other piece. And then the back one. Line it up. Make sure all your circles or your, there we go. I like to look at the other side. Yep. Okay, so now you have a pretty strong, oh, let's go ahead and fold on that burnish line. Or on the edge of your gusset here. Okay, so there's our base. I'm going to go back and add designer paper or the pattern paper here, but remember this is where I used the other add-ons, and I cut out my designer paper, my decorative paper using this. You can go the next layer down to layer, it just wouldn't have that cutout edge like the rectangle. So just cut out the next smaller one for your designer paper, okay? Your pattern paper. So let's talk pages. Let me get organized here. All right, so you're going to remember I said I combined two pieces for my pages also. So I'm going to cut out two. One will be the front, one will be the back. You can probably see why it's important to have a good heavy cardstock when that's the base of your page. Now I did trim these up so that I did not have these pieces. I went ahead and took my cutter and I trimmed it at that little indentation or little line that you see when you cut it. Okay, so there you go. Then I worked with these separately then. Okay, so what I did, let's see, what I did was I decorated my front, then I decorated my back, then I combined them. So let's take a look at how I did the front. I went ahead and I used this die and I cut out my paper. Let me get a piece from this collection. I did not use much of this one, so let's okay, so then you're going to cut out the next smaller size, and that will become let me get this done real quick, sorry. Now with the add-on dies, it does cut all the way through. Oh, that's not true. With the designer ones that I ordered, so this cuts out the pattern, but then you have to take the thin piece that goes with it to cut it out. Where is it? Right there. So now I need to put this around it. Is that what I did? That's, no, I need the next smaller one down. Let me go ahead and pause you and get myself organized. Okay, sorry about that. So in order to cut out the layering piece, you put down the design you wanted, and then you have to put this around the outside to cut it out. Okay, so then you remove the die from the paper, and you might want to use, I have this tool to brush out, try to get all those little pieces off. Okay. And then you have this. If you don't have that add-on though, you just do the next smallest die, and then it'll just be a border like so. Okay, so then what I did was I glued this down, and I went around the edges with this needle nose, you know, with that real fine tip, so that it laid down nice, and I centered it. Okay, then I took the next smallest die that I cut, and I need to make that my flap. So I'm going to go ahead and cut up to the slit that's in there when you use your die. And remember, my front and back are not attached yet. They're still separate. And I bent this on the score. I would then cut out the next smallest one to of pattern paper of the Prima, and then I attached it with this flap. I glued that to the back like so. Okay, so I'm going to do this without the pattern paper on there. And I just eyeballed it for the center. About there, and then I press down. I hope this isn't too random. It's kind of hard to make sure I want to make sure I'm clear with everything, but remember, some of the things I used are not from Country Craft Creation. So when I am explaining this and trying to make it look like my original book, I just want to make sure you know that this was a separate purchase, the other one. Okay, so then I would add my decorative paper using the next smallest die. Remember, I also had a flap, so I cut out the second to the smallest. I clip it. The very smallest die does cut all the way through, and so I cut that out like so. And I did ink all of my edges when I did my book. Glue that down. Go ahead and bend it where you see that indentation. Burnish it. Now, remember, I did a paper clip. If you wanted to use a magnet, you would put a magnet here before you put your pattern paper on. You would put the magnet here before you put the pattern paper on. And then, like so, or you could go up higher, wherever you want it. And then you put glue on that little piece and attach it to the back. And that's how you create the front page, okay? And then you decorate it like you want. Once you're done with the front page, you grab your back page. Remember, these are going to be attached. So for the back page, we did a pocket. Oh, all these papers. So what I did was I cut the next smallest size. I'm going to trim off the extra. You can use a paper trimmer also. I'm just going to eyeball this. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half. And this is how I made the pocket, okay? So I put designer paper on here with the next smallest die. I cut out a piece, cut it in half, and now I would glue it on 3 sides. Keep the top open. Place it where you want. And then you would add your decorative paper on top of here with the next smaller die. And then you can use that as a pocket, okay? So to attach it to your book, remember you're going to do 4 of these if you do a 4-page book. You're going to attach the front and the back piece. You only are going to glue on the bottom and the right-hand side if you want it top loading. If you want to be able to add something on the outside, you would glue the top and the bottom. You need to keep the side open that's going to be attached to the hinge, and then decide if you want to add something to the side, like a mat inside or at the top. I chose to leave my top open, so I'm going to place glue on the bottom and on the top. Oh, I lied. Sorry, on the side. I left the top open. Okay, I'm going to attach these. Give them time to dry. It's much easier to teach something like this in person too, by the way. Sometimes it's hard on video. I have found that I teach much better live. They have bodies so I can see your expressions and to see, oh, are they understanding that? Am I going too fast, too slow? Did that not make sense? Okay, so the left is open to attach to the hinge, and the top is open so we can put something inside. Okay, so you would do as many as you have pages, you know, keep doing that, working on it. And let me show you then how easy it is to attach to your book. Now, remember I said I chose to do a spine. A hinge, I mean. Just so you know, the other way to do it without this hinge system would be to cut a half inch away from where you cut your die, and you would use a cutter. I'm just showing you real quick. You would fold it over on your score, and then you would glue that down like so, and you would do separate pages. I thought it was more durable having a hinge system. Okay, so you can either put score tape on your hinges or you can do glue. For the purpose of the video, I'm using glue. You do all your embellishing and decorating before you attach it to the hinge. And you want to make sure that it lines up so that it is the same as the rest of the book. You want to make sure that everything lines up. And then press it together. You try not to go all the way down to the bottom of the hinge, but sometimes you kind of have to on a book like this because you want it to line up with your front and back cover. At least I did. I wanted everything to be even. Okay, and then there would be page 1. Or actually, I always start at the back and move forward, so this is page 4. Okay, and then you would add the next pages on. So I hope that that makes sense the way I did it. And then you can go back and, like I said, add the outside paper and the designer paper and decorate. But at least that gives you an idea of how I use the dies. Let me show you real quick, just again, what it looked like. So see, I did go back and I added decorative paper. I did punch a hole and I added a charm. You don't have to do that. The closure, if you choose to use ribbon, you would lay your ribbon down before you put your decorative paper on. So let's go to the back. So this would be this page right here. This opens to the left. Looks like I used a different size in the demonstration. Here is our flap right here. And then the inside. Okay. So it actually turns out to be a pretty durable book because of the layers. I definitely will be using this again, and I'll try maybe a different style than I did before. Here's the top loading. Remember, I left that open, so I just added a tag. So please ask questions. Like I said, sometimes it's hard to know if I'm clear enough on video without seeing facial expressions, and I will try and answer them to better explain something if I did not explain it well enough. Give these dies a try. I think that they're going to have a lot of uses. This paper collection is beautiful. I love the pinks. I'm a pink girl, and so I think you would love working with the Prima Golden Coast. check out countrycraftcreations.com online. You're going to find that they have a lot of different paper collections to choose from. They have embellishments, they have the dies, and make one and share it on the Scrapbookers of Country Craft Creations page on Facebook. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day.